Vinyasa, flow, hatha, ashtanga, yin, iyengar, restorative, power yoga, rocket yoga, hot yoga. I mean, there's so many. There's endless labels for different types of yoga these days. So if you don't know what they all mean, and most of us don't, it can be really hard to pick which class you want to try. And classes aren't cheap these days. You don't want to be wasting time, energy, and money on a class that isn't quite right for you. So let me break down in this video what some of those labels mean, and most importantly, which class would be right for you, depending on what you actually want to get out of a yoga practice. Let me start by saying that all yoga is yoga. All of these different labels, they are all just yoga. Yoga is an ancient Indian practice which combines asana, that means the postures, the shapes and movements, and pranayama, which is the breathing, so controlling the breath in a certain way, to help calm the mind and the body, preparing us for stillness and practices around meditation. But as time's gone on, different ways of putting the postures and the breathwork together have emerged. And this is where we are today with all of these different labels for what is essentially the same thing, yoga. So let's start with beginners. If you are a complete beginner, it's important that you learn the basics of the postures and that you learn to practice them safely and effectively. Not just so that you avoid injuries and hurting yourself, but also so that you can really effectively learn to engage your muscles. And the best way to learn the postures really well and effectively is by going to a slower paced class to begin with. So I would say if you are a complete beginner, avoiding things like power yoga or a really strong vinyasa or fast flowing practice. Those are probably going to be a little bit too fast paced and you might lose your way and not really get to learn the details of the postures. So something like hatha yoga would be excellent. Hatha is actually really kind of an umbrella term that is the basis of all of these modern types of yoga. But hatha tends to be a slower paced practice where you'll spend a bit more time in each posture, so you'll get to understand it. A slow flow practice could work really well as a beginner. And if you see a yoga class advertised as just yoga and there's no label in front of it, that's probably going to be suitable as a beginner as well. It's likely to be hatha yoga if it's not specified as anything else. And now if you are a little bit beyond beginner, if you've been to some classes, you feel like you've understood the foundational yoga poses, you get the sun salutations, you know how to do them well and effectively, then you're probably ready to try any other style of yoga. This is the good news. Once you've got the foundations down, you can go and try any of the other styles and you'll probably get along just fine. If you're looking for something that is trying to exercise your muscles to get stronger, more flexible, work on your balance and build a bit of heat, maybe even burn a few calories, and I'll just, as a caveat, point out that that's not really the intention of yoga, to be a form of exercise and to burn calories. But if that is something that is your goal, if that's what you're coming to a yoga class for, then there's kind of a sliding scale of intensity of flowing practices. The gentlest version would be something like a hatha yoga practice or a slow flow yoga practice. And then going up, you might find a vinyasa class or a flow class. Vinyasa tends to be interchangeable with the word flow, really. Ashtanga also is a flowing practice that's a little bit more challenging. With Ashtanga yoga, you repeat a set series in every class. So if you're someone who really likes to perfect things, Ashtanga yoga could be really great for you. And then going a little further up that scale of intensity, you have things like power yoga, rocket yoga, forest yoga. These are all quite physically demanding classes that are a bit more challenging and a bit more energizing. Also, hot yoga might fit within that category. This is yoga in a heated environment so that you do get a bit more sweaty, it's a little bit more physical. Not for everyone. Personally, I'm not someone who gets on particularly well with the heat, so hot yoga's not for me, but some people love it. So that's kind of the scale from bottom to top in terms of intensity. If you haven't really done much exercise before or recently, then starting towards the bottom, hatha yoga or a slow flow practice is probably going to be plenty to challenge your muscles and to really get you exercising. Now let's look at the other side of yoga, which is the slow and restorative. So if you're coming to yoga because actually you just want to slow down a bit, you want to learn to relax, learn to switch off so that you can sleep better, maybe you want to learn to meditate or work with your breath, maybe you already do loads of exercise or your life is just very fast paced and you're coming to yoga from a perspective of wanting some slowness and stillness, Then you've got things like Yin Yoga and Restorative Yoga. These are really beautiful practices that help you to learn those skills, and they are skills: switching off, winding down, relaxing. Both Yin Yoga and Restorative Yoga are usually floor-based practices, so we're using bolsters, cushions, blankets, things like that to help us relax into different shapes. We're going to be stretching in different ways. There's no strengthening or balance work in Yin or restorative classes. It's all about relaxation, releasing tension. Yin Yoga works with applying a little bit more pressure to the body's tissues, so a little bit more focused on stretching. Whereas restorative yoga is more focused on the deep relaxation. If you want to know more about the difference between yin and restorative to see which one would suit you better, I have got a video on this channel explaining the differences, so I'll link that in the description box below. Then the last couple of points I'll mention are pregnancy and postnatal, and then injuries and health conditions. So if you are pregnant or if you're postnatal and you're looking to go to a yoga practice, if you've not done any yoga before, your best bet is to look for a tailored pregnancy or postnatal yoga class. This is the best way to be able to engage in a yoga practice safely. If you have been practicing yoga for a long time and then you fall pregnant, then most yoga teachers will probably be okay, as long as you let them know, with you continuing to go along to that practice, because you already have a foundation of yoga. You understand how to perform the postures safely and how to adapt as you grow through your pregnancy. Finally, if you are dealing with an injury or an ongoing health condition, if you're recovering from illness, then a few options for yoga that might really suit you. One is Iyengar yoga. This is not that common at the moment, at least here in the UK. I don't see many Iyengar classes around, but if you can find one in your area, this could be perfect because they go into a lot of detail about the postures. You take your time to make sure that you're performing them correctly, and usually an Iyengar yoga instructor will make sure to modify the poses specifically for you. So if there is something going on in your body, a condition, an injury, an illness, they should be able to adapt the poses to you. But if that's not available to you, then a slow flow or hatha yoga practice is what I would recommend. It's also worth just considering how experienced the yoga teacher is. Generally speaking, the more experienced a yoga teacher is, the more experience they will have had with working with people with all kinds of different conditions and body types and injuries. I always like to encourage people to try as many different types of yoga and as many different teachers as they can find, because there's so much variety and there's so much you can learn by going to different teachers every now and again. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you, and thank you for watching.